Well, welcome back to the hot seat. Today I'm chatting with John J. Ryan, who's president of CISA Trust in Geneva. Good morning, John.
Good morning, David.
So it was great to chat with you on the succession planning webinar that we ran as part of our Middle Eastern series. But for PCD members who didn't catch that, perhaps you could introduce yourself and the CISA Trust business.
Yes, thank you very much, David. Well, our company, CISA Trust Company, was established in Switzerland in 1972, when the world indeed was a very different place, along many different dimensions. And I joined the company in 1993. I had previously been working in the United States as an attorney. I'm admitted to the bar in New York and Florida. So this company has a very long history in the business. And over the years, we have grown. We have, in addition to our Swiss office, we have a BVI licensed trust company, and we also have a licensed South Dakota trust company. And we have marketing offices in New York and Miami.
Any plans to mark the 50th anniversary next year? Anything special going on within the company? It's quite a milestone.
Well, COVID permitting, David, we hope to have a big party. If not exactly on the anniversary date, which is in February, which is a little bit cold, we might wait until the summer to have a proper event.
Wonderful. You mentioned the global nature of the business, the fact that you've got offices and representation in different jurisdictions. Is there any geographical focus to the client base that you have as a business at a group level?
Our traditional client base at our inception were clients resident in Western Europe. And we also, I would say even from the early days, had clients in the Far East, in Africa, in the Middle East, and Latin America, of course. I speak Spanish as a first language, so doing business in Spain and Latin America was always came naturally, I would say. And my mother was born in Havana, and of course that assisted developing business in Latin America. This is pre-Castro Cuba, I might emphasize. Of course, Cuba today is not yet with us from a business development or marketing perspective, but it's part of the roots of this company, if you like, are Latin American origins, especially my parentage.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that description of the client base. I mean, on a recent webinar that we were doing last week on moving to Switzerland, some of the wealth planners on the panel were talking about how Switzerland is a trust-friendly environment. There's recognition in law. Perhaps you could describe, for those less familiar, why does it make sense to have a trustee in Switzerland?
Well, I think the most compelling reason is perhaps the historic reason is a practical one. Switzerland is still home to about, I would say, somewhere between 25% to a third of the offshore deposits in the world. So you have a very active private banking sector here, and it makes all the sense in the world for the trustee to be close to the banking relationships. Another compelling reason is the fact that Switzerland has recognized the Hague Convention on the Recognition of Trust. And Switzerland has also established, since 2007, an official tax practice with regard to foreign trusts holding accounts in Switzerland. So you've got the banks here, you've got the Hague Convention, and you've got a recognized and accepted tax practice at the federal and cantonal level, giving certainty to Swiss trustees. Now, the tax administration doesn't view, in general, the trust or the trustee as a taxable subject. And if neither the settlor nor beneficiaries are resident in Switzerland, there's no Swiss tax on the investments. However, there are some carve-outs with regard to Swiss real estate and so on. But in general, there is no tax here when you have a Swiss trustee and you have foreign settlers and beneficiaries, even with the assets being held in Switzerland.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, it's the banking infrastructure, it's the recognition in law, and it's the experience and expertise that lies in the country, I think, then that seems at the heart of it, and it is a makes a compelling case for that location.
Well, there's an industry that's developed here over the years that really has drawn top marks from clients. In particular, the highly trained individuals that service the trust business, the professionals, and the high level of client service generally. I think that's a spillover from the private banking, the high quality of service. So clients that this is really one of the things they talk about when they talk about Switzerland. It's the certainty and the good service.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, many of the CISA clients have US connections. So perhaps you could just explain how foreign grantor trust works in Switzerland in that context.
Well, yes, David, a foreign grantor trust is a peculiar creature of US tax law. And you can actually create a grantor trust in any trust jurisdiction. And a grantor trust is a trust that is revocable by the foreign grantor, or if irrevocable, only the grantor or his spouse may benefit from the trust. Typically, grantor trusts are of the revocable kind. So you could have a trustee in Switzerland and a foreign grantor, that's the American word for a settlor. So if you've got a settlor that's resident in any country outside the US creates a revocable trust, that trust is typically treated by the IRS as a grantor trust. What does that mean? That means that distributions from the trust to the US beneficiaries are not subject to tax. They're treated as essentially gifts from the foreign settlor or grantor to the US kids, which are free of tax but have to be reported in the US if certain thresholds are met. Now, all that is well and fine, but under the Trump tax reform, he made an important change that affects foreign grantor trust. Immediately on the death of the foreign grantor, the trust becomes non-grantor, and the underlying investments of the trust, i.e. the share positions that have unrealized gains, they all crystallize and are subject to tax immediately on the settlor's death. Previously, you had a 30-day window to basically do a reverse check the box election to avoid that, but no more. So one of the planning techniques that are used is that when you have a foreign grantor trust with US beneficiaries, you periodically sell the positions in the underlying portfolio on a yearly basis or half-yearly basis to mitigate that risk. But indeed, you can do a foreign grantor trust in Switzerland, in Cayman, or even in South Dakota. You can have a foreign grantor trust.
And you do that rebasing exercise so that then you have cash to distribute rather than long accumulating assets, which would then trigger a tax event. Is that broadly the thinking?
Well, that's absolutely right, David.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks for explaining that so clearly. And as part of our US series, we've had a lot of panelists discussing the states of the US, the advantageous legal environment for wealth structuring. Perhaps you could explain how South Dakota fits into this picture and the range of options.
Well, South Dakota today is considered by legal scholars and practitioners one of the leading states in the US. It has modern and up-to-date trust laws. They're well known for their decanting provisions, asset protection, dynasty features. As you probably know, South Dakota has eliminated the rule against perpetuities. So it really benefits from a modern, up-to-date trust law that is really every bit as modern as its East Coast rival, Delaware. In fact, the top states every year compete for top spot. And they have, South Dakota has a governor's task force that is busy looking around to see what the other states are doing to make sure it maintains its competitive edge. So, and it's a jurisdiction which is regulated and requires a trust license to operate, unlike many US states. So in order to have a trust company in South Dakota, you have to obviously obtain a license from the Division of Banking, and you're subject to prudential supervision. So it is a serious jurisdiction. Indeed, who would consider putting their money in an unlicensed bank? So it's important that wherever you operate, that you have that protection for clients.
Are there any trends in the demand for South Dakota structuring? At the moment, are we in a peak or a trough, or what's the picture been like over recent years?
Well, I would say there is a demand not just for South Dakota trust services, but for U.S. trust services. Within the U.S., South Dakota competes with Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware, also New Hampshire, to be on the list of the most, if you like, highly rated trust jurisdictions. But the U.S. is benefiting from this move, I would say, in the international private client planning to move away from the offshore centers and to do your trust planning onshore. So the U.S. has benefited significantly from that trend.
Okay, thanks. And I mean, more globally, do you think that COVID has increased demand for new succession planning structures from clients and contacts? What have you observed this last 12 months has changed the way that people have viewed the world and brought maybe into sharp relief and focus their mortality and the need to make sure that plans are in place for the next generation? What's your experience been of these last 12 months?
Well, David, that's absolutely right. This global pandemic has caused individuals, especially those who previously thought they might be immortal, to look at their arrangements. And we have many clients who have used this opportunity really to review their succession plans to see really what might happen if they contracted and died from the virus. And during the pandemic, although travel to see clients is more difficult and nearly impossible, I would say, nonetheless, during this COVID period, children are being born, individuals are dying. So you do have that generational transfer, I would say, somewhat accelerated by COVID. And individuals very much are focused on the succession planning aspect of trust. Indeed, individuals typically do trust for estate planning, tax planning, and asset protection. And COVID really has highlighted the focus on estate planning.
And do you think, I mean, Switzerland's well placed to benefit from high net worth relocation as we come out of the pandemic? I mean, obviously, the bulk of your business is in international offshore wealth structuring for clients who don't necessarily or won't reside in Switzerland. But do you think that as we come out of this period, high net worths and ultra high net worths are thinking about the way they live their lives, and Switzerland's well placed to to offer something to that, particularly the ultra high net worth families?
Well, that's right, David. Switzerland has the forfait regime here, which is the lump sum taxation, where individuals who are eligible for this regime actually move to Switzerland. They're not supposed to work. They can actually be entrepreneurs and live off of dividends, but they cannot have a salary in Switzerland. And they pay tax on a formula derived from their expenses in Switzerland. Other regimes have gotten into the act. Well, of course, I think the best known of these regimes has to be the UK resident non-dom regime that attracts the very affluent with taxation on a remittance basis. Italy is also now offering a regime like this. Portugal and many other countries have actually gotten into this. Now, Switzerland is particularly attractive for individuals, for the wealthy individuals. However, not everybody is in a position to really relocate for tax purposes. An entrepreneur that is, I would say, in mid-swing in his career building businesses, to simply move to Switzerland isn't ideal. Not everyone is in the right stage of life to do that. And I would suggest that you probably have to be someone who's retired, disposed of their business, to be in that position. And in a position to extricate oneself from all of one's family commitments back home. So that's the ultimate type of tax planning, is relocation. And as we see, many clients are interested in principle, but very few are actually in a position to move lock, stock, and barrel for tax purposes to a foreign jurisdiction.
Well, thank you for that, John. Many thanks for this conversation today, and we look forward to sharing it with our members.
Well, David, it's been a pleasure as always. I look forward to seeing you soon again, and in person, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, John.